Shreveport City Councilman John Nickelson is here. Mr. John, Merry Christmas. Thank you for joining us, sir. Welcome back.
Good morning. Merry Christmas to you, Robert. Thank
you. A lot of ground to cover here. So the proposed pay raise, the one-time...
You're going to be the Grinch?
We can get to that at the end.
Aaron, that's the nicest thing I've been called over the past 48 hours.
I bet.
Is it off the table? Is it going to happen? Is it not? And if not, why?
So I'll open my remarks by saying that I think, based on my conversations with my colleagues and the city's chief administrative officer, that this is going to pass, even if over my objection. So if you are a worker of the city of Shreveport anticipating receiving this bonus or one-time payment, we can talk about the distinction between those two. I think you should expect to receive it.
But you have made the point repeatedly, social media and elsewhere, that, and correct me if I'm wrong, because it's your vote, it's your, to some degree, reputation, that you think this shouldn't happen, that you're going to vote against it because you think it's against the rules, against the law. Explain that to us.
So I raised two concerns about the proposed payment on social media this week, in part because I wanted the reason for my no vote to be clear to everybody paying attention to this issue. One was that the fact sheet accompanying the legislation initially indicated that the source of the funds for the one-time payment was CARES Act funding. Everybody agrees, including the administration, that it is not permissible to use CARES Act funding to pay a bonus or a one-time payment to employees, with certain limited exceptions that don't apply here. In response to the concern I expressed on that front, the administration has offered an amendment to the legislation authorizing the payment to specify that the funds for the payments will come from the operating reserve. That may take care of that concern, but at the time I made my Facebook post on the payment, that was not the situation. The second issue that I raised is that the Louisiana Attorney General, and not just the current Attorney General, but attorneys general stretching back decades, have repeatedly issued opinions indicating that public entities like the City Council cannot give employees bonuses because it is a gift of public funds, and we simply don't have the power to do that. It is permissible to give one-time payments that are compensation for services rendered. It's not permissible to give a bonus, and the analysis, supporting the decision as to whether a payment is one or the other includes multiple factors, including the timing of the decision to give the bonus, the timing of the receipt of the funds, and who's going to get them. In this case, unlike some bodies like the school board, for example, which builds into its budget, I understand, every year a payment of about $500 for employees on the front end of the year when they're budgeting, we are making this decision after receiving $17.5 million or thereabouts of CARES Act money last month. We're specifying in the legislation that it is to be received before 12/25, before Christmas, and it's not a uniform supplemental payment, right? Only employees who were not scheduled to receive the 2021 pay increase the council authorized for public safety, fire, and police are going to receive this.
Seriously, John, pardon me, why not? Why not, just to save yourself a lot of headaches and phone calls and hassles and arguments, why don't you just vote for it and let the court sort it out?
Listen, I'm in a little bit different position from my colleagues in that regard because my day job is as a lawyer. I'm going to serve on the council for either 4 or 8 years. But I'm going to be a lawyer for the balance of my professional career. And I have great respect for our city attorney. I think he does a great job. But because I'm also a lawyer, I have an obligation to make an independent assessment of the legality of the legislation I consider. And if I evaluate legislation and I think that the state constitution, for example, as in this case, prohibits an action, I'm just not going to support it, even if I'm the only vote against it.
John, let me ask you this. If there were no CARES Act money If this 2020 pandemic never happened, would we even be discussing a pay bonus for work? We were in financial crisis before this.
Listen, I am so glad you asked that question, because at the top of my notes for this call is information addressing it. Just 3 months ago, Aaron, the administration was urging the council to approve a $35 million line of credit to pay operating expenses. Mm-hmm. And the message at that time, in September of this year, behind the scenes, was that if you don't approve this and the city goes bankrupt, it's your fault. Mm-hmm. The only reason our position has changed between September and now is that last month, just a few weeks ago, we received $17.6 million of CARES Act money. Look, we have to, as a council and as an administration, worry about today, but we also have to worry about tomorrow. And if every time we have a little bit more money than we expected to have, we increase compensation or we give it away in some other way, we're going to find ourselves in the very same spot we were 2 years ago when we got elected, which was that the city had no operating reserve at all.
John, if this money is deemed to be an illegal payment, what then?
Yeah, they're going to take it back. Dear city employee, you owe us $500 by the end of the week. How's that going to work?
I do not anticipate there'll be a finding of that nature.
Okay. We cut pay earlier this year, too. We cut pay for the top brass. I think we cut hours for others. But yet now we're in a different position. I'm still mystified by this.
Well, again, the only reason that our cash position is different is the $17.6 million we received last month from the federal government. And we're not going to have a $17 million subsidy from Washington, D.C. every year going forward. This is a one-time thing, or perhaps we'll get a little additional support in 2021. But we, as a council, have yet to address the structural imbalance between our revenues and our expenditures. And personnel costs, of course, in the general fund drive the very large majority of expenditures.
John, just to clarify, you said, and I said, well, it passes, and somebody says this is illegal, it ends up in court. You said, well, employees won't have to pay it back. Would the city have to pay it back? Or is this just something that everybody, you think it's against the rules, you think it's against the law, you think it's against the Constitution? But if it passes, everybody gets paid, and the city doesn't have to pay it back. Is it just like everybody looks the other way? What happens?
The only way there would be any consequence to the city for doing this, assuming that it is not lawful or is unconstitutional, would be if someone initiated action in court or the attorney general initiated action against the city. And my best prognostication is that's not going to happen. All I can do is vote the way I think I'm obligated.
So pardon me, and you are, and I'm not being facetious here, you are such a principled man that you are going to vote against a pay raise for city employees, a one-time, not a bonus, but a pay raise, despite the fact that nobody's going to do anything about it based solely on the principle that you think it's against the rules.
I will never do anything as a city council member or as an elected official in any other office that I may ever hold in the future that I think is unlawful or unconstitutional. I just won't do it. If that makes me the Grinch, I regret it, and I hope that everybody will still wish me Merry Christmas who gets a paycheck from the city of Shreveport.
If it passes today, is it irresponsible?
Oh, look, I think this individually, it's not the fiscal decision I would make if the decision were mine alone. But you have to look at decisions of this nature cumulatively, right? So if this, say, and I don't have an exact number because the fact sheet accompanying the legislation doesn't specify the cost, but call it $1.5 million or $1.75 million. Well, that's one bucket of money that we're not saving. We also had this $1.75 million also on the agenda for introduction tomorrow, or today, which was proposed to be given to each council member to do as he wished for his district. So, perhaps in the context of the city budget, although it feels strange ever to say this, $1.75 or $2 million is not a lot of money. But if you add up $2 million again and again and again, you do get to a material amount of money. And I think my overall point is that we've got to consistently make fiscally conservative decisions if we want to get where we need to be in the long run.
6-1, 5-2. What are you thinking?
Oh, I think this may be 6-1 based on the conversations that I have had.